So welcome to today's webinar titled Building Belonging Through Art. This is the first of our series that's examining ways in which art, sport, and advocacy can be useful tools for building belonging, especially across lines of difference. We are so excited to have you here today. I want to start by introducing myself. My name is Jordan Crumroy, and I am the Director of Strategic Partnerships here at Welcoming America. And I want to start by briefly going over a few housekeeping items. So along the bottom of your screen, you'll see a few different features that are available today. We encourage you to use the chat for any questions related to the Zoom platform if you're having trouble there, and use the question and answer feature for any questions that you have related to the content that'll be shared by our speakers. We'll try to address as many questions as possible throughout the webinar. The webinar today is 1 hour and it's being recorded. So while we hope that you can stay for the entire time, if you do need to leave early, you'll receive the link to the full recording in the next few days. So I'm going to start with giving a brief overview of Welcoming America for those of you who might be joining us for the first time. So Welcoming America, we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization leading a movement of inclusive communities becoming more prosperous by ensuring that everybody can belong. We believe that all people, including immigrants and refugees, are vital contributors and are integral parts of the success of the community and its shared future. Through the Welcoming Network, we work to change systems and culture. And we'll talk a little bit more about the network here on this next slide. The network is really our how, the how of what Welcoming America does. So the Welcoming Network is comprised of over 250 nonprofits and local governments that are working to build more inclusive communities. Led by Welcoming America, the network is both a network, but also a movement driven by the conviction that communities make better decisions when residents of all backgrounds, identities, and perspectives are meaningfully engaged. If you are interested in joining Welcoming America as a member, I encourage you to apply on our website, welcomingamerica.org, or you can email membership@welcomingamerica.org for more information. So here on your screen, you see some of the many benefits that we offer, including webinars. Today's webinar is the kickoff for our series, and it's part of our commitment to grow the capacity of local leaders by deepening a knowledge base so that you all can take theories and strategies back to your communities. Now, one of the things that we really focus on at Welcoming America is belonging. And a lot of our work, including the grant funding that we provide to members via our Fund to Foster Belonging and the criteria that's outlined in the Connected Communities framework of our standard, is really rooted in principles of contact theory. So here on the screen, you see a little bit more about contact theory, which was developed in the 1950s by a sociologist by the name of Gordon Allport, and since has been further developed by many others. And the idea behind it is quite simple. It's that to reduce prejudice among people of different backgrounds, that people need to work together on a shared goal. So if we were to oversimplify, we could say that research really shows that to reduce that intergroup prejudice, contact and connections between groups has to meet some important criteria. And you see that criteria outlined here, that folks have equal status, right? That it isn't one group volunteering to help the other, that there's a common goal, whether it's fixing up a local playground or tackling an environmental problem, securing quality childcare, that it's done without competition, that there's opportunities in that for meaningful interaction, right? It's not just passing somebody at Walmart or in the school. And finally, that there's some sort of authority buy-in, that leaders from groups have really propped up this engagement and support it. Programs with these ingredients can be incredibly powerful in reducing prejudice and in building the connection and hopefully long-term really laying that groundwork for community action. So today's webinar and the ones that follow in this series is an effort to contextualize how people are intentionally building belonging through art, sport, and advocacy as the tools. So we aren't really examining art sport and advocacy as a byproduct or even the result of belonging, but as the method. And I encourage you to remember these tenets as you hear from the speakers in this series and question, how or could they apply? So if you haven't already, be sure that you've got the next 2 webinars on your calendar. During next week's sport webinar, we'll hear from a city that included sport in the city strategic plan. We'll also hear from a professional sports player turned DEI trainer who's setting the standard for equitable sport in Australia. And then the following week, on January 25th, we'll hear from 2 advocates, one from a tiny rural town that's been supporting a group of self-organized youth in advocating for a community center, and another speaker that's bridging through abolition work in Louisiana. So you won't want to miss them. But without further ado, I want to introduce you to why we're all here today and start by introducing our 2 amazing speakers. So Debbie Lacey and Daniela Peterson are the 2 speakers for today's webinars, but they're also the MCs for the upcoming webinars and the co-creators for this entire series. So before I pass the mic to them, I'll just read you a bit from their bios. As the daughter of a Mexican immigrant, Debbie Lacey co-founded the Eastside Refugee and Immigrant Coalition in 2002, a grassroots effort focused on making the East King County region of the Seattle area more responsive to the needs of its multicultural, multi-faith communities. Debbie went on to create Eastside for All in 2019. Eastside for All collaborates with community partners on racial equity issues in school districts, local government, policing, economic development, and civic participation. With over 25 years serving in nonprofits and coalitions, Debbie's leadership strengths show up in the connecting spaces between different racial and cultural groups and between sectors. Eastside for All's Build for Belonging initiative has been featured in Who Belongs, a series of podcasts published by the Othering and Belonging Institute. And in 2023, Debbie was recognized by Welcoming America as one of 5 Women of Welcoming in the US. Debbie lives with her husband, son, and 2 dogs in Kirkland, Washington. And next we have Daniela Peterson, a native of Chile. Daniela Peterson holds degrees in social work from Pontificia Universidad Católica de Valparaíso. She joined Trust for Public Land as a creative placemaking fellow in 2018, and most recently served as its community strategist senior advisor. Daniela looks for ways to use parks to foster connections among families and communities by making them more accessible. She believes that physical infrastructure alone isn't enough, no matter how well designed or constructed. Some of her signature projects include Park Picture Day and the Park Listeners Program. Daniela often says that parks have superpowers, and in an increasingly polarized and autonomized society, many of her programs unleash those superpowers of creating sustained connections. Daniela's scope of work was significantly expanded with her promotion to become Trust for Public Land's first Tennessee program director for Welcoming Places. First and foremost, though, she's a citizen, which can be seen in every aspect of her work. So Daniela and Debbie, thank you for all that you do and for being here today. And I will pass it over to you.
Thank you, Jordan. Hi, everyone. What an introduction. Well, I'm going to start talking. I'm going to be the first. And what I want to do is to welcome you, all of you, all what is in you. And we're going to set the intention of what we're thinking for the time that we have ahead. It's going to be around like 45 minutes. Well, first, I want to acknowledge Welcoming America and how grateful I am that an organization like that exists. I remember when someone explained me what they do, I couldn't believe it. So thank you for all the work that you do. We see it and we really appreciate it. Debbie, I admire your work, as I always tell you, so I'm very happy that we can share this space. And everyone out there, thank you for, I think it feels like a New Year's resolution. We have over 300 people signing up for the webinars. And I like this resolution for the year to increase belonging in our communities. I think I'm gonna do it too. So we hope to see you in the next 2 others. For today, any of us, we are not artists. So what we want to do is not to challenge, but to show you that we can work with arts not being artists. I'm not saying that you can do art without artists, but we want to show you that it is possible. And then for that, what we want you to do is like, not that you're going to see like a bunch of slides and just talking. We want to do this, and in some cultures, they call it cafecito, like have coffee. In some cultures like mine, we say un tecito. In Argentina, they say mate, and then we can Turkish coffee. The idea is like this very simple that we can talk. If we can talk about belonging, I don't know how we can do the work. So the idea is to make it very like, kind of like, we can talk about this, and it's among us, and we can share it. So Debbie, I'm here with you.
Thank you, Danny. Such a pleasure to be here with everyone. And as we go through the course of this, I think just like Danny was saying, wanting to, as much as possible, make this format as interactive as we can. So you can use the Q&A function. I believe you can use the chat, but if you have specific questions for us, the Q&A function is best, and we can get to that. And then if you're having some technical questions or just logistical things, I think you can post that in the chat for folks to help resolve if they can. But yeah, I'm Debbie, she, her. I'm calling in from the Pacific Northwest. I know we have people from all over here today, so welcome to all of you. When we were thinking about putting this together and Welcoming America hosting these, as we were heading into the end of last year, I was really struck by just all that myself and community partners were holding, and heading into a time of even more uncertainty and a lot of fear, a lot of divisiveness, and trepidation about what's to come. And while so much good is happening in our communities, there was kind of a dark cloud over a lot of it for much of last year, for reasons that are understandable, right? So much happening that's really hard for people. And so the importance of people feeling like they belong where they are is, I think, all the more critical. And like Danny said, neither one of us are artists ourselves, although I think of advocacy as an art. I think of the craft that Daniela does as certainly an art in bringing people together. So we can talk about that and what the broad view of art is. But we're going to talk more about some of the more traditional forms of art and how that can be integrated in your belonging work with communities, and how it can hopefully help people with the connecting time that is needed right now to bring more understanding, more bridging between people and between differences. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Danny, and we have kind of an interview format here, and then we're each going to share some concrete examples for you all, hopefully, that can help bring to light what we're talking about. And so one of the things that's been really great in getting to know people throughout the Welcoming America Network is understanding how they got here to this work, I mean. And so we talk about that, right, as our why. And Danny, I'm wondering if you can share some of that with this group here today.
Yeah, I think it's a question that I ask myself often, the why and how I got here and why I'm still here and keep trying. And I was sharing with Debbie that is one particular story that is related to the project that a little bit more I'm going to be sharing with you. So I think many of you are this story is going to resonate when you are implementing a project. You are at the end of it. You are sweating. I live in the South, summer in the South, 100 degrees, you feel like 110, 4 days of work, but like a year we're actually getting ready for these 4 days. And we were getting ready to finish this project. I'm going to be honest, I was done. And it's that moment when you question, is this worth it? All of this, if it is worth it, for what, for who? Why am I doing this? Why am I sweating here? Like, no one is asking directly. I mean, we work with communities, but we can turn our back. So I was in that moment mentally, I was like exhausted mentally, physically, but spiritually too. And we were doing asphalt art, which is basically paint the streets in this community in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was like 8 p.m. summer. I remember it was like the sun was still up. I was sweating for being there all day. Pandemic times, so we couldn't have many people there because of the guidelines. And the design of this, it's beautiful. You're gonna see it in a little bit. So when you paint the street has to dry, right? So this was ready, but it wasn't dry. So we have cones, road closure and everything, but cars still want to go through. So we were fighting with the drivers to please, go around. And that was the moment I was like, why I keep trying this? And in that moment, I saw a woman walking by the street. And in the community that I work, we have a lot of Guatemalan people, Guatemalan indigenous, and she seems to be part of that community with the clothes that she was wearing. And she stopped. This is like in an intersection, so she stopped right at the corner and see that. And I approach her and I say, "Hi, hola, how are you? ¿Cómo estás? Su nombre?" She's like, "I'm Isabella," and I was like, "Hi, Isabella." And I asked her if she recognized what she saw on the street. And on the street, the design mix the textiles from Guatemala and because we have a lot of people from Guatemala, indigenous Guatemala, and then we have people from Kenya. One particular family that is really strong in this neighborhood. And in Kenya, in their baskets, they have a star on the bottom. And in Guatemala, in their textile, you see a lot of frogs and really bright colors. So this is the designs that we kind of put on the street. So I asked Isabella, do you recognize this? Do you see what is here? And I was pointing to the frogs. And she looked it twice. And the second time that she saw it, you can see that she actually recognized it. And her eyes light up and tear up. And mine too. And I just couldn't actually, what do you say in that moment? So what I say was, es para usted. This is for you. You are part of this community and you're welcome here. And after that, I do not care if other people, I do care a lot of people feel welcome, but it was worth it. It was just for her, I think was completely worth it for someone to realize that is part of them is here, and they're welcome and they're seen. I think that's why I'm here. I've seen the power of feeling seen, and also, as Jordan say, I believe in power of parks and public spaces. They should speak. They should talk about who we are. So yeah, that's my passion: parks, public space, and how people can feel welcome there.
That's amazing, and such a great example of, you starting really at the end, like you had been working so hard up until that point. And, in community, when we're starting initiatives, especially new ones that are with new groups of people, there are many moments of despair and wondering, what did we get ourselves into, and why are we doing this? And you literally got an answer right there in the form of a community member who was able to see herself in vibrant colors right in front of her, a place where she walks every day and has that constant reminder. Such a great example of that, and the importance of the physical, showing up physically for each other in our communities, and how art can do that.
Like that.
Yeah. Well, I'll share a little bit about my why with a different story from my work. On a public trail, 42-mile trail, that we helped develop cross-cultural public art plans for, with an incredible group that included people from all over the world, and LGBTQIA community members and trail users who tend to be predominantly white and predominantly US born in our area, and multiple ages too. We brought them all together, and we decided to have our first planning meeting right there on the trail, knowing that we would be mixing in Zoom meetings. But after our first meeting there, physically being in the space, outdoors, it was a beautiful spring day last year. One of our members who's from the Gambia took it upon herself to bring her youth back on their own to come visit the space. And she shared with us, her name's Adam Diba, and she shared with us that when she brought the kids to the space, they hesitated before going onto the trail, and they looked around at each other and said, "Are you sure we're allowed here?" This was a public space, and that showed the importance of not just putting things out there and saying that people are welcome, but having that personal invitation and connection and literally, being introduced and warmly brought to spaces and saying, yes, just like you said, this is for you. She said that to her kids. This is yours. This is ours. And that was the start of them contributing and us all working together to how do we continue to claim space through art together and have it reflect back to us who we are. So pretty exciting. And that keeps me going through all the hard times too.
Yeah, it's kind of like little treasures that you keep in your bag. I love this story. Like that first interaction is always so important. When we talk about park users, trail users, it's such a general kind of like theory. But I like to kind of like first time users. I would put attention to the first timers, because the one that I call the granola spandex people. They're gonna keep using them, they're gonna keep using the trails, and I'm excited. Sometimes I can be one of them, but it's a first timers that I think we can have to put more attention to.
Yes.
So should we go into some pictures?
Yeah, we wanted to start with you all with our why, and hope you're thinking about your why as well as we go through. And then it's the how, right? I'm sure lots of you are here to talk specifics with us. And so we welcome your questions. And Danny's going to start sharing some of the how of how you go about bringing art as a project in creating belonging.
Anthony, please. Thank you. So as I told you, I'm based here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. From Chile to the south, so I think I'm call myself a real southerner. So this park that you see here is the East Lake Park. It's the first park in our city, so it was a zoo first. It's not a zoo anymore, but so here you can see the corners. So where we located these asphalt art installations are here in these two corners. Sorry, I'm using my mouse, like you can see what I'm doing. But in the picture on the bottom, you can have like a drawn picture of the park that I'm talking. And then on the two pictures on the top, you have each corner. So I'm showing you the before. And if you put a lot of attention in the bottom picture, you can see the after, but you have to be very intentional. And the title is like, I put like a process. Many times when we think about art, we center what happened after. So it's like the result, the mural, the product. And what is challenging with that? One is very dehumanizing for the people that was behind of that. And also it's very reductive. And I think also is a missed opportunity. When we talk about process, art is not just the product, it's also the process itself. So you can have a creative process. Sometimes we think about projects and we say, we want a mural there in that corner, and then you call the artist. What we're trying to tell you is like, you should work with artists from the beginning. Because it's maybe not that corner, or like it's something that you didn't see. It's not a corner, it's actually the asphalt. In this case too, the opposite of what we want. We don't want you after this kind of like pointing out where you should put asphalt art in your community. We show these corners and we pick asphalt art because the community was working in the public art kind of concept for a few years, and then they have kind of like final ideas. And one of the ideas in this community for public art installations was asphalt art, which is something that you see every day that you can use and also make your community more like safe. So that's the reason that we were there. So please, Anthony, next. So again, you have kind of like a close up of the corners, and then the next one. And then what I was telling you, when we talk about art, we also need to talk about artists. And I'm gonna highlight with the people that I work with the pictures that they're really good are from Brooke Breyer, John Dooley from Drawn, Ella Library, Jasmine LeBlanc, one of local artists, and Street Plans, which is a design studio based in Miami, more like in urban planning. So I really want to highlight with the people that we work. And the other part about art is that we forget about the cultural part. So we were laughing with it because we should have said art and culture. Art sometimes is like very unidimensional, and it's not. I think art is the completely opposite, but sometimes we just reduce art to like the medium, the mural or the sculpture. But when we talk about arts and culture, you have more space to kind of like move, and culture is there. It's the underlined. And when we talk about culture in our communities, I want you to think culture is what we don't say. So we don't say that in Chile, before you eat, you're gonna have bread and something a little spicy. We don't say it. It's just gonna be there. That's culture and it's experience. No one is gonna tell you here that iced tea, they don't say ice, it's iced tea. They're gonna offer you tea and it's gonna be ice already. That is an underlined. Here, no one actually hug when they see each other. They're not gonna tell you that. It's just happen and it's there. So Debbie, I'm doing kind of like a presentation talk solo. Like any questions so far?
Yes, yes. Well, Danny, this is great. And I want to go back to what you were saying about the process and how a lot of times when art's commissioned or art, is wanting to be brought into spaces, everybody focuses on that end result, like you said. Can you talk a little bit more about how you focus on the process and what exactly that means?
That's a great question. So I don't have pictures of like the process from these 4 days. So these pictures try to like represent a little bit of this. What we did, it's for a year, when we are new in a community, we are a conservation environmental agency. We connected with the people that was there already working. So we have Ella Library in this case that has been working in the neighborhood for many years. And then we didn't have we didn't know how to implement asphalt art. So we reach out to the people, the designers that they know how to implement. So from what kind of paint, what time of the year, how long it's gonna take. But then the concept. So it's really interesting when Debbie talks about kind of when you go to public art commission. We went to public art commission without a design, which was already a problem because in order to get approved, you need to show a design. And we couldn't show one because we were asking permission to start the process, to start the design. Because if we didn't have it and then they say no, what are we gonna say to the community members? So even I don't wanna not to do it, but it's gonna be challenges. Like our systems are not created for community processes. So that's something when things don't work out or you can check a box in the form, it's because that's not for the kind of work that we're doing. So as a practitioner, I think most likely many of you are going to have more examples of that. So at the time, our community partner, Jasmine LeBlanc with Ella Library, she went to the park. So in the pandemic, first part, second part of the first year of the pandemic, everyone was in parks. Everyone was thinking about parks. So she went with like a paleta cart, like a popsicle cart, and mask, all pandemic style. And she asked people what they would like to see on the street, but she did it in a way with like sheets, and we review what we're going to be asking. And it was really interesting to see that when you put the park on the streets, people, like most of people, what they did, they kind of expand nature into the streets. So always like a frog jumping out of the park, or was like flowers, or was like something that kind of like infused the rest of the neighborhood with nature. So we took that and that we gave it to the kind of planning agency, and they gave us like 3 mock-ups, and we decided for one of them, and the colors are all inspiring like Guatemalan textile. So that's the process. And the process itself, like Jasmine and Ella Library, they're already wearing a process because they have been there, they live there, they know the whole community. So she also showed the designs to other people. So our process was kind of like over other process, the ones that were before us, kind of respectful of what people have been doing in the neighborhood. So that's a process. So all of this, it took over a year. So we haven't even talked about materials or like implementation or any of that. That was just to kind of like decide what to do. So Anthony, you can show the next one.
Yeah, go ahead. I might have other questions, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna go over and looking at the time. So here's like these 4 days, 3 days of implementation, 3 or 4 days. So street closure, I think all of you may have an idea what is that. You have to show up there at 5:30 in the morning and put this up. And then like at night, please thinking no one took them up because you will have to pay. So that's, and then in the picture on the bottom on the right, that's we did with big stencils. So kind of the way that you need to print this is like, it's also a specific process that we learn how to do. And I'm gonna show you Anthony, the last one is actually how it ended up. So on the right, you have the main intersection, and then on the left is like the other one that I was showing you. And it is very simple. You will like, why spend so much time doing? I'm from Chile. I will do acopiwe, which is our national flower. You know, like if you ask me about nature or like something symbolic, that would be me. But we are 5 Chileans in Chattanooga. That's not resonate with anyone. And our colors are not this one. So it's so many layers when we talk about working in community and kind of people being seen. But the one is intentionality. Like this is showing the process of who is here more than the artist, which is also interesting. I don't think an artist could have designed this either. So that's something important too. Some artists are really community-led, community engaged, and it's different kind of artists, like different kind of lawyers. So something to keep in mind is how we make sure that community are part of the process in designing spaces or designing these like asphalt art installations. I think I've been talking a lot, and I really wanna hear about yours, Debbie. I think it's a good time to do the transition. At least you have like a burning question.
Yeah. Well, I think, one segue for sure is that, the importance of the process and the relationships that are built before any art even gets created, before your materials are prepped or you're actually doing that. The coming together around what is it that we want? How will we make the concessions, negotiations, collaborations, cooperations to decide what is it that we as a community want to see? And the decision making around that, the conversations, the storytelling, people bringing their whole selves to that and their passion. And this is why art works so well as a tool for belonging, is because like Jordan was saying earlier, finding that common ground. The contact theory says that's a big part of it. If you can all agree on the big picture, on the vision, that's what you all can come to, regardless of your different backgrounds or beliefs or cultures. And so art is clearly, just a universal draw, and that happens in our community too. And so, Anthony, you can start with our slides going up. We had this opportunity through the Fund to Foster Belonging with Welcoming America to partner with East Rail Partners, which is another nonprofit that runs this 42-mile trail built on a historic old railroad line, and it goes through multiple municipalities. So there's a lot going on, and a lot of cooks in the kitchen, if you will, around what will happen with this trail. And interesting that Danny and I are both talking about art in outdoor spaces today, but of course, these concepts apply for any space, where indoor or outdoor, where you might be thinking about bringing art into the work that you're doing, as part of belonging, inclusion for your cities, your nonprofits, et cetera. So the next slide will show just how when we started to come together, we had, like I said, groups from different cultural populations in our community. And as we were talking together about what we wanted to see, we very broadly defined art. Of course, the murals and things like that are, or the sculptures, permanent art installments. But people were very excited about temporary art installments, things that are performance focused, dance, music. And we had a fashion designer who was part of our group. So we brought in artists of color, creatives of color, and immigrants with us, and us being nonprofits and community-based leaders from all different backgrounds. And we said, what is it? If we're creating cross-cultural art on the East Rail, what is that? And making sure that we were discerning that from cross-cultural from multicultural. We didn't want to, although that's wonderful when cultural or multicultural events take place, we still want those to happen. But we have a real void in our community of truly cross-cultural. And that goes back to what Danny was saying about that process where you're coming together and you're sharing who you are, you're bringing yourself, you're listening and learning from others, and you're co-creating something new, not just in silos, performing together on the stage at one particular event, for example, or all contributing to an art project with very distinct and different and separate art contributions. So the next slide will show that after we decided to do this performance in July, the group came up with this. We didn't set out. We were focused on Welcoming Week. So those of you out there that do Welcoming Week, it's a lot of work, and we get very excited about it. So that was our original goal. That July event just happened because people were excited and they wanted to co-create together with art and performance on the trail. So then when we got to the actual art installation, by that time, we had gone through a lot together, challenges, tribulations, some tensions as well, working together in a group that's so diverse. And that's part of it. And we learned and we listened to each other, and they created this temporary art installment. And it was almost an afterthought. You'll see there's all the international flags there. One of our group members really wanted, that was her contribution. She's not an artist herself, but she wanted to bring something to bridge all the communities there. And ironically, it ended up being something that everybody really enjoyed, because as they were coming in to view the art outdoors in this garden space, they were looking up and pointing and trying to find their flags. And so that was just great to see. And again, that's communicating that space is really for everyone. So then what we did is we took all of that wisdom, and the next slide will just be an information sharing about, we were able to develop an inclusive call for artists about this. So just like Danny was saying earlier, thinking about co-creating with artists in the community through the design aspects and the where things will be placed, and all of that is so important, and not excluding them from their extremely valuable input in being part of the community's aspects of development. So we talk about all the different ways that we can include and support our artists in our communities. And really value their contributions. Yes, through compensation that's appropriate, all of that, but also in how we work together, right? And not having that hierarchical view. So, yeah, Danny, I saw your wheels turning a bit.
I think it's so important, and this is not the first time that I hear you talk about this, but it's always something new. Can you spend more time about multicultural and cross-cultural, and kind of like signs that when you know that you cross the line and you are in a cross-cultural space? I think you kind of give us some tips, but maybe like, yeah, if you can go a little deeper on that.
I think it really starts with the intentionality. I don't know about you all here listening, but I know we get invited to a lot of things and that are multicultural, where whether it's a resource fair or some other community event, and somebody's hosting that, and they send out the invitation to everybody, and we all show up. And on that certain day, we're all under one roof, or we're all in the same outdoor space. We may be able to interact a bit if we have time to go away from our tables or our area and meet with other people. But we didn't co-design that. That was led by the host organizing that, and we just all showed up, and we're glad to be there, right? That's just more multicultural. And again, there's value in that. We'll keep having those events and spaces, and that's great. But the cross-cultural is, the intention is the connecting spaces. The intention is the relationship building, the understanding, the sense that I'm not just bringing who I am and sharing that. I'm learning, I'm receiving, and and by that exchange, we're creating something that's more than or different than, in addition to all of our individual unique contributions. And we're modeling as a community too, that we can coexist rather than being siloed in our individual groups and communities, which sometimes we definitely want that too, because we get a lot of support from people who speak our same language and know our same culture. But if we don't also have the bridges, the spaces where we're mixing together and we're dealing with our language barriers and struggling through that and getting to know each other, then how do we create belonging? Then we've just created a space where a bunch of people from different places exist, but we're not really connecting. And when we don't connect, when we don't belong, whether that's through art or sports and other advocacy coming up, other topics, then how do we also co-lead? How do we feel like we have enough of a sense of belonging in a community to advance our ideas and lead with others who are from our same background and different backgrounds? So it's really all builds on each other, but without that intentionality of cross-cultural or intercultural, we miss a lot.
Yeah, thank you. That's so illuminating and also like challenging. Going back to like New Year's resolutions, I think personally we benefit from the multicultural space. Like we said, all these people, and it's just very transactional. They were there this time, and it was very diverse. But cross-cultural, it's not the numbers. It's not, like what you see is actually what is happening, and what happened before in order to get there. I don't know if people have questions. I have one more, and then we can also open if people want to know more about something specific, questions for us. But I have one more, Debbie. You make it the way that you tell on the pictures. I can imagine everything, like I'm being there, and it seems like really easy, so can you share? I don't want to be in the negative side, but like I would like to learn like surprises that through the process you didn't expect, like challenges or like a good surprise that you weren't like anticipating, working in these cross-cultural spaces.
I feel like every time we showed up to meet together, there was something that we weren't expecting that came out of it because we were all together. I think the biggest thing was that how broad art ended up being, and how appealing that was across cultures to be thinking outside of the box of what could be public art in this outdoor trail space over time, seasonally. everything changing. And when everybody's bringing their culture and their ideas, we saw some themes that resonated with all, like nature is always big, right? And multilingual, people want to see their languages and everything. But the unique aspects too that came, we didn't end up doing this for the July performance, but we have it in mind for a future, which is we had a stilt walker from the Philippines. She loves stilt walking, and that got everybody talking about how in their culture they have some kind of elevated performance element that comes into some of their festivals or special performances. It was really cool, and so we might bring that in another time and show how through a common theme that came up with fashion too. Lots of cultures are super into fashion, but it's very different and unique to each one. So those were always delightful surprises.
I want to know
Yeah.
the date for the next
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. And I see you have a very concrete question in here, Danny, about whether that was paint or chalk on the asphalt.
It was paint. It's in the more technical side of things. If someone wants to know more, I can send you like the details, like the specific one that you need to buy. You can do it with chalk, but it's gonna last a day. So this is a short-term installation, which means it's not gonna be there forever. And it can be there for like 1 year to up to 3 years. So that's it's paint.
That's great. And the next question, what are some steps you would suggest to foster a cross-cultural event? I can get us started on that, Danny, if you want, and then I'd love to hear what suggestions you have, because you've done a lot. I would say we've learned that really developing relationships with all the different cultural organizations and groups without an agenda, prior to any project getting launched is really important. And when we do that, everyone can bring their contribution, and we co-host. I say these words a lot, like, co-create, co-design, but that's really necessary rather than one entity, like I said, inviting everybody separately. No, we come together, and first we just come together to get to know each other. We share food. We usually potlucks work really well. We just hang out. We find out about each other's kids and grandparents and parents and pets and their stories about being here. And then we have something that we can rest on and lean into when it comes time to actually do an event together. But I think it's harder. It is harder if you're just trying to pull that all together for a particular event or initiative.
That's true. Based on the experience that I have or what I have seen, I think one important one is budget.
Yeah.
It takes more money. And then if you don't have budgeted like food in and like it's not an item in your budget, I think we should start there. Like your intentions should be reflected in your budget. Because we have like these big ambitions and we expect people to bring the food, we expect people to do all these things. So people can cook, you can provide all the materials or like the space. So are we starting the budget? The other one, thinking about process, we are in a process, but I want you to look at your teams. In my case, our team is very white. So how can we expect a multicultural result working with communities if our team, one, doesn't represent the community? So let's think about, or we are not bridging in our own teams, like how we expect to work with people and kind of have that result. So what we do when we work in particular neighborhoods, we hire people from the neighborhoods. We make sure that everyone that we're working is represented in the team, kind of like that is doing more things. So that's, for me, those two are kind of like very important. One is very practical too, like it's just money. And the other one, like when we, expect something that we are not practicing, I think it's not gonna work out at the end.
Yeah, I want to combine a couple of money questions that have come in. One is asking, are you saying that it takes more money to co-create? And another person is asking, what's your wisdom about getting sponsorships for international events and courses and activities. So
I mean, in my experience, if you're already asking that takes more money, most likely it's going to take you more money. But in my case, it's like sometimes we're working in immigrant communities with no budget for food at all. And if the baseline is like you don't even have an line item for food, yes, it's going to cost more money. But if we reframe that's part of the process, like in our case, it's as important as the part that we're going to have at the end. So, and then when we serve food for us, it has to be warm. If we're talking about dinner, it's like all these like things that it's like out of respect, but also like to kind of like have this glue among each other. So yes, it can cost more if you want. If you want to go to we support local. We try to feed people. So when we have an event in a park, we try to have food kind of like in a mile around. So we try not to go farther than a mile. So it's like part of the neighborhood. So we're supporting the neighborhood, and it's also food that people already know. So, I mean, it can go very well. Sponsorships, I work with someone that is great. I'm really bad at that, but some people really know how to work the sponsorships. I mean, if people are willing to support, I don't see what would be the challenge, but I don't have much experience on that. I don't know, Debbie, if you do.
yeah, I think we've had good luck with, it depends on your area, right? Depends on who all is there and the corporations that exist, et cetera. But a lot of times, if you can tie this into something that's a bigger need in the community, whether it's economic development and thriving economically, or community safety, these kind of things that really help people see the connection between what you want to do with art and belonging and cross-cultural art in particular, and those bigger needs of the entire community, it really can get people to invest. And I just wanted to answer the question about, how do you reach non-English speaking population to participate through those partnerships? Many of our groups that I was talking about in our project, their communities either have limited English or English is their second language. And if we didn't have them as partners in the planning and development of things that we knew would be accessible to them, we wouldn't have been able to do what we did. And we believe in compensating partners who are bringing their expertise. It's not just for governments or other institutions to pay external consultants all these high fees and not pay our community-based organizations and community leaders for their expertise and wisdom. So when it comes to budget issues, that's another part of co-creation that we in my organization really value, is that we're not going to bring a bunch of people together and leaders together and extract their wisdom without really compensating them. And that both means financially, but also mutual benefit, that what we are doing and creating together, that they see that is of significant value to them, the youth, the elders in their community, and for generations to come, that it's going to be a meaningful impact for them. So that's what we commit to when we say we're coming together to co-create.
That's wonderful. We have more questions than I anticipated. So I think food is taking a lot of space in the conversation, and I don't want to make life very difficult for anyone. So if you are new in a community and you have no idea what is going on and you don't have any contact, going back what Debbie said, it's like the intention. If you wait someone with what you in your culture is coffee, but people can see that you were waiting for them, that you have something, I think that's the start. And if you see people not drinking the coffee, or they are not eating what you brought, that's also a starting point. Like, what do you like to eat in this? So like food can be the glue, can be excuse. I love food, but the call is like food should have a place in your planning. It shouldn't be the afterthought. And if you don't know what food to serve, that's always excuse to kind of like engage with a community member and kind of have that help. But I think it's like while you're waiting. I'm gonna also, people are talking a lot about the culture aspect. That's not my definition. It's a definition from my college, my professor, that I always go back. So culture is what we don't say. what is like the underlined, what we assume everyone knows. So the example of the tea happened to me. In Chile, we drink hot tea. So my first week in the States, I wasn't feeling great, and someone offered me tea. And I was like, oh my God, incredible, tea. And what they gave me was like half liter of like the coldest tea that I ever had in my life, which it was the opposite. I didn't need that. So here is always iced tea, but no one is going to explain you that because that's the way that it is. So that's the underline that what we don't say. I'm not saying some things are right and wrong. That's all a conversation, but pay attention to the things that people are not saying. And that, I think there you're going to have more kind of keys or tips to how navigate their spaces and their culture.
Amazing. Well, this has been a whirlwind. I know we could talk for much longer, and we appreciate you being here. Danny, it was such a pleasure to be able to talk with you and hear more about your work and collaborate with you on this. And we want to turn it back to Jordan because somehow we've reached the end of our time.
Oh gosh, I know. I hate to cut you all off. This has been such a incredible conversation. I've found myself giving quite affirmations over here and realizing I'm on mute. But this has been really, really, really lovely. So thank you, Debbie and Danny. If you want to hear more from them, like I said, they're the MCs on our next two webinars. So be sure to join us again next Thursday for a conversation about sports, and the following Thursday for a conversation about advocacy. As a reminder, the webinar is recorded, and so you all will receive that in your email in just a few days. If you have any questions or you want to reach out to us about membership or other things, feel free to send us an email. You can use the one on the screen, events@welcomingamerica.org. And again, Debbie and Daniela, just want to thank you so much for being here today and for leading us in a discussion. So we'll see you all next Thursday.